Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this track to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
With its 2 juicy beef patties and 3 slices of melted cheese topped with tangy Big Arch sauce, the Big Arch is what happens when you start making a McDonald's burger and never stop. The Big Arch, the most McDonald's burger yet, for a limited time.
Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews, all on the app. Download today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And on today's episode, we've got some news. Not a lot of news, but news. It's not to say that it's. I don't know if it feels particularly slow. Like there's a lot of news, but not a lot of interesting news out there at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I only had 2 stories that I thought were worth bringing on the show yesterday. I scrounged up a couple of more. So, yeah, we'll kind of see where this goes for today. Hopefully you'll enjoy the episode. Next episode on Tuesday, I actually have Carrie Murphy from the Final Lap Weekly podcast, which is a NASCAR podcast. But Carrie also has an EV-centric YouTube channel called Whooshin. I'll put links to both of those shows in the show notes. I'm subscribed to the Whooshin channel, and I'm also subscribed to Final Lap Weekly. I actually enjoy listening to that podcast, even though I really don't follow racing. I do find racing fascinating, though. I like racing, right, in the same way that I like coding. Like, I don't know how to program myself. And as a matter of fact, I have no aptitude for programming as much as I've tried. I've not really tried racing. But anyway, one of my closest friends is a programmer, and I enjoy listening to him talk about programming. I like it when programmers talk about programming. I find it super interesting, but I have, like I said, no aptitude for it. In that same way, I enjoy people who are passionate about racing talk about racing. Like, and I guess now that I'm kind of thinking about it, it's sort of like being at the fire station, because there's so many people, especially at my station. We have 9 or 10 people at the station at any given time. And there are so many diverse likes and interests that, you know, you could be talking about baseball, you could be talking about video games, you could be talking about racing. Anyway, the Final Lap Weekly podcast is fantastic. Carrie and Toby do a great job. I'll put links in the show notes. This isn't an advertisement for their show. I'm just telling you, I enjoy listening to their show. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I did yesterday on Friday, is listen to the Final Lap Weekly podcast. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our EV news. I have one Tesla story. This is how bad it's gotten as of late in terms of news. There's no Tesla news. There's lots of speculation on what Tesla is going to have for the end of the quarter in terms of delivery and production numbers. But I don't want to report on speculation. I'll just wait a few days for Tesla to officially announce that. By the way, I'm losing my voice. I tried taking a couple of cough drops before I came in here, but it's not really helping. 1 second. All right, let's try that again. But yeah, we're close enough to the end of the quarter. I don't need the speculation. We'll just wait till Tesla gives their official numbers. But Elon did say on X that Tesla is developing a vehicle that is way cooler than a minivan. Now, I am a minivan owner, proud minivan owner, But there are a lot of vehicles that are way cooler than a minivan. Someone on X asked Elon, can you please produce, or can Tesla please build a minivan? And he said, we're producing something that's way cooler than a minivan. He gave no additional information on that, although there have been, during Tesla's official presentations, there have been pictures of what looks like a SUV with a similar design aesthetic to the Cybertruck. So some people are calling this the Cyber SUV. I mean, I don't really want an SUV that looks like the Cybertruck. I love the Cybertruck, but I don't want every single car to look like the Cybertruck. Maybe you have a different opinion than me, but that's my personal opinion. And also, Tesla already had the Model X, and the Model X was a lot like a minivan. I liked the Model X a lot, and I would be happy to see a slightly bigger version, a more roomy version of the Model X. But I feel in my bones it's going to be a Cyber SUV, and it's going to look, similar to the Cybertruck. So we'll see. If it does, Tesla is paying zero attention to how the Cybertruck is selling. It's just they're just doing what Elon wants them to do. They're not looking at market research. Although we will find out kind of how well the Cybertruck sold with that 10 days of a much lower price for the more affordable version of the Cybertruck. Tesla's not going to split that number out specifically, or they haven't in the past, and there's no reason to believe that they will for this, for the first quarter of 2026. But we know roughly how many Model S's and Model X's they sell. There might be a small clamp. We might see some increased numbers in the Model S, X, and Cybertruck field. Let's just go with that, simply because there was the run on Cybertrucks. I use air quotes there. And then people who wanted an S and X are maybe pulling the trigger to get one. So we might see those numbers up a little bit. Let's move on. Waymo is giving 500,000 driverless cab rides or robotaxi rides per week in the United States. This is pretty impressive because in April of 2025, 11 months ago, they announced that they were giving 250,000 rides per week. So they doubled the amount of driverless robotaxi rides in a little less than a year. That's pretty impressive. Right now, if you're curious, Waymo is currently operating in Atlanta, Georgia, and Austin, Texas, which they're going through Uber for that partnership. But then they're also operating in Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, Los Angeles, California, Miami, Florida, Orlando, Florida, Phoenix, Arizona, San Antonio, Texas, and San Francisco. They are operating there under the Waymo app. So the Waymo, the first two cities, Atlanta and Austin, those are through Uber, and the rest are actually through Waymo. In addition to that, in addition to the cities that it's already serving, Waymo has an additional 21 cities that are on its up next list. And I'm just gonna read the city because it's too clumsy for me to read the city and state. But it's Baltimore, Boston, Charlotte in North Carolina, Chicago, Detroit, Denver, Los Angeles, London, Minneapolis, Nashville, New Orleans, New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Sacramento, San Diego, Seattle, St. Louis, Tampa, Tokyo, and Washington, D.C. So good mix of not only, cities outside the country, but also a wide variety of weather. So it'll be interesting to see how Waymo does in cities that have more inclement weather than the current cities that they're operating in. Although San Francisco does have some pretty crazy fog sometimes. Let's see here. Moving on to our next story. Honda killed their upcoming 0 Series EV. So we talked about this. It's also rumored that they're going to kill the Honda Prologue. We talked about that. Acura, which is a Honda brand, they have killed their Acura ZDX EV. We've talked about that. And this week we learned that Sony and Honda, they formed the Sony Honda Mobility Group, and they decided they were going to work together and build the AFEELA car. I think it's called the AFEELA 1. I can't remember. It was a $90,000 sedan or $90,000 PlayStation. They announced that at CES in 2026, just a few months ago, that they were going to have a SUV that was built on the AFEELA platform. Yeah, in the grand tradition of EV startups, Sony Honda Mobility is now killing the AFEELA. So there's the brand's gone. And I just want to say in January of 2026, I was on the Daily Tech News Show at CES, and I called it then. I went back to listen to make sure that I was not wrong. I hate being negative. So, people who really know me don't think I hate being negative, but I don't like just poo-pooing the hard work of other folks just because, it's an EV startup and I don't think it's going to succeed. I try to be supportive is what I'm saying. I just didn't feel like Sony or Honda's heart was in the AFEELA. And ultimately it wasn't. Let's go ahead and move on to our final story, which I think is an interesting thought. So you remember the Dodge Neon? If you're not familiar, this is a small compact car that came out in the US. I'm sure it came out in other countries as well. The Neon was simple. It was easy to maintain, which led it to be an affordable car. And it was, fairly decent to drive. I've driven a couple of Neons in my life. I've never owned one, but my friends for sure have. Well, Stellantis, which, owns Dodge, is struggling in the US, and we've talked about that. But to be more specific, they're struggling in the EV space in the US. And honestly, we could probably say that Stellantis is struggling in the EV space in all of North America. But for sure, it's struggling in at least 1/3 of North America. Stellantis has a partnership with a really interesting Chinese company called Leapmotor. And Leapmotor makes these really decent, affordable EVs. They have factories, I believe one factory's in Poland and one factory's in Spain. Well, Joe Boris at Electrek wrote a really good piece on, he argued that the U.S. needs a new age Dodge Neon. And I don't know that he's all that wrong. And he thinks that the A10 EV from Leapmotor could fit that bill. So just kind of as a, very brief breakdown of the A10, it's not going to break any speed records or any acceleration records, right? But it does come with a 50 kilowatt hour battery, which would give someone around a 500 kilometer range or 310 miles of range. It's got, 100 kilowatts of DC fast charging, which is not the fastest, but it'll get you 30 to 80% in like 15 minutes. So it's not awful. But it's an affordable car. And, in the world that we live in right now, getting a car from China or even Europe to the US would be difficult. However, Leapmotors is expected to start selling their EVs in Canada and Mexico sometime in 2026. That's who knows if that'll happen or not. Fingers crossed it will. But what about here in the U.S.? Well, not all is lost. Stellantis still has manufacturing plants here in the United States, and by a stroke of luck, they own Dodge. So would it be too much to ask for Dodge to spin up one of its assembly lines in, one of their mini Michigan plants? I think they have 4 plants in Michigan and a couple in Canada. Would it be too much to ask for them to build what essentially would be a Leapmotor A10 and then badge it as a Dodge Neon? And that way, the consumers in the United States, who I believe are clamoring for a more affordable EV, especially one that has around 315 miles of range. Are you kidding me? We could get one here in the US and it would be a Dodge, but it would be all the underpinnings of the Leapmotor's A10. And it would probably just be an A10 and with Dodge badging. But still, Not too shabby. I think it would be I think Joe's right here. I think it would be a very good option for us in the United States. Now, not all of this, some of this stuff is my opinion and not Joe's, and I probably should have called that out, but just so you're aware, go read his article to get his exact thoughts. But Leap Motors sells the A10 in China for around $10,000 US. Now, it would be great if we could get that deal here, but we probably wouldn't be able to do that. It would probably cost us a little bit more. So let's just say they sell it for $25,000 to $30,000. That gives, folks in the US another affordable option for a reasonably nice car. And I'm sure folks in Canada and Mexico will be able to get the Chinese version, and maybe they'll pay $5,000 or $6,000 less than what we pay here in the US. But all around, everybody would get access to a much more affordable EV with a really decent range. So I don't know. Interesting thought. It's not like the best car ever, but not every EV needs to be the most technologically advanced piece of machinery out there. Sometimes it just needs to get you from point A to point B and, make it so that you don't have to pay $5 a gallon for gas, which is the Fry's grocery store by my house. It's $4.99 at the moment. All right. So I told you this was going to be a quick episode, and it was. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday. I'm editing Carrie's episode not as we speak, but I was editing it right before I started recording. So that episode should be out on time. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I will talk to you on Tuesday.
Fiscally responsible? Financial genius? Monetary magicians? These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds, because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it. So your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
With its 2 juicy beef patties and 3 slices of melted cheese topped with tangy Big Arch sauce, the Big Arch is what happens when you start making a McDonald's burger and never stop. The Big Arch, the most McDonald's burger yet, for a limited time.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.